Lord Tennyson wrote a poem in which he shares that he has seen God in a flower in a crannied wall. George Strait sings a song about seeing God in his newborn baby. Sometimes it seems like God plays hide and go seek and pops up unexpectedly, like George Burns in those old Oh God movies, or a cast of most unlikely characters in that kind of old television series, Joan of Arcadia. Have you seen God today? When was the last time you saw God? Think about your past week. Was there a moment where if you had been still and silent, that you might have felt God's presence? And here, in this place, can we see God in those sitting near us, our neighbors, or maybe in the stained glass windows, or the light that filters through? We want to see Jesus. At least we say we do. But are we prepared for what happens when we open our eyes? In John's Gospel today, there's the Jewish festival of the Passover going on. And these Greeks show up. It doesn't make much sense for Greeks to show up at a Jewish festival. But they do. They're there. And they don't go to Peter, the rock, Jesus' right-hand man. They don't go to John, the disciple who Jesus loved. But they approach Philip and then Andrew. Why, of all the disciples, would they go to them and not just straight to the top? Well, it may be because in John's Gospel, Philip and Andrew were the first disciples who then went out and shared the good news with their friends and family and invited others to follow. They may have had something innately welcoming about them. But I think it had more to do with that Philip and Andrew are also Greek names. And sometimes we're just more comfortable going to others who we have something in common with, a bond. The Greeks might have felt that they had a better chance because they could relate. And so these Greeks go to those who they feel safe with, and they make their request. They say, we want to see Jesus. Now, this is completely unexpected, especially by the disciples, at least. Why on earth would Greeks want to see Jesus? Were they just curious? Were they spies? Had they heard all the hype? Well, as we understand John's writing, it is most likely that they actually, authentically, desired to follow Jesus. And the disciples didn't know what to do with this. It had never happened before, not really. Could the Greeks follow Jesus? They weren't Jews. Jesus had spoken with a Samaritan woman once, but that was totally different, wasn't it? And so we never learn if these Greeks are ever granted the opportunity to meet Jesus face to face. But Jesus does respond. John points out the significance of non-Jews seeking Jesus, and that at that moment was when Jesus declared that his hour had arrived to be glorified. And then he explains to the Greeks and anyone else listening what it means to be a disciple, how to follow Jesus. Jesus shares himself and how to follow in an obscure metaphor about a grain of wheat that must fall to the earth and die in order to produce fruit. He says that we who love our lives must lose them. Nothing can stay status quo. If we truly want to understand, if we truly want to live, we must let go of our securities. We must release the roles that we play that are average, mundane, that just get us by. And we must risk standing for justice, caring for the least of these. We must climb out of our comfort zones. We cannot live our lives just about ourselves anymore. We are so much more. And when we serve Jesus, we see him everywhere. We can see Jesus when those who are hungry are fed. We can see Jesus when those who are cold are given warmth. We can see Jesus when those who are outsiders are included. We can see Jesus when strangers are welcomed. And when we speak for those who have no voice, Jesus is there. When we care for creation, Jesus is there. When we comfort the broken, Jesus is there. And when we love those who are hardest to love, Jesus is most definitely there. And because we claim to want to see Jesus, others may come to us wanting to be introduced. They may be people with similar backgrounds as us, or similar names as the Greeks went to Philip and Andrew. They may be people who we have known our entire lives, but we have never had the courage to speak up, and they have never known how to ask. They may be those who we haven't the foggiest what we might possibly have in common with them, or we never dreamt that we would ever be associated with. But the joy is that we are called to be a safe place so that they can look at us and see Jesus. And we can look in their faces and see Jesus too. If we want to see Jesus, well, we must look to where he is lifted up and exalted. Not on a throne or a pedestal like a successful king who is prosperous. No, Jesus is lifted up on a cross. That is where he receives his glory. That is where he comes to us in our brokenness and shows us God's love. And it is on the cross that Jesus will draw all people to him. Not only the Jews or the Greeks who wandered in, but all people, you and me, and those who have not yet heard the good news. And when we draw into Jesus, love will be written on our hearts. God will be our God, and we will be God's people. Our eyes are opened. We will see Jesus. Amen.